From a distance, it looks abandoned. 500 towers standing shoulder to shoulder on an empty desert floor, 7 and 8 and 9 floors high, the same color as the ground underneath them. No steel, no concrete, mud, straw, and water stacked 500 years ago. It is not abandoned. Somebody is climbing 8 floors of those stairs right now to get home. This is Yemen, the country the world has spent a decade calling the most dangerous on Earth. That building has already outlasted more wars than most countries have ever had. And it is not the strangest thing here. Off in the western mountains, there is a village welded onto a cliff face. Stone houses stacked on a rock wall with a straight drop underneath them, laid without mortar, still holding after 300 years. Below it, entire mountainsides have been cut into steps by hand so that bare rock runs green from the valley floor to the ridge. None of that was there to begin with. Every piece of it was carried up by people. There was never enough flat ground in this country to go around, so they stopped spreading out and started building straight up. Which is where your coffee came from. That word on your cup mocha is not a flavor, it is a Yemeni port. Almost every man in this country wears a curved knife at the front of his belt. It is almost never drawn, and the reason has nothing to do with violence. There are disputes out here that get settled in one afternoon by men sitting on a floor with no lawyer and no courtroom involved anywhere. And inside those tall houses, the most important room is the one furthest from the ground. Windows on every side, and nothing practical ever happens in it. The oldest person in the family sleeps down near the door because the stairs are past them now. None of this is a ruin. Nobody sells tickets to any of it. People wake up inside these places and go to work. Which leaves the real question about Yemen, and it is not how any of this got built. It is how so much of it is still standing. Hardly any of this gets filmed. If you want to keep seeing the parts of the world that never make the news, tell us in the comments where you are watching from tonight, and subscribe to come with us. You already know this country by one word. It is the wrong word. So start at the bottom of the house and work upward. For about 200 years, nearly every coffee bean that left this country was killed before it was allowed onto a ship. Boiled or roasted all the way through so that it could never be planted anywhere else. Because for a while, whoever owned the living plant owned the entire trade. On the Red Sea coast stands the port of Al-Makka. Europeans wrote the name down as Mocha. From the 1400s until the end of the 1600s, that town was the door. Ships came in from India, from Persia, from Turkey, and later from London and Amsterdam, and every one of them was there for the same cargo. That water is not open ocean. It is the Red Sea, and just down the coast from Mocha, it pinches shut into a strait barely 20 miles across, with Africa on the other side. Every ship moving between India and Egypt had to come through that gap. Mocha sat right next to it. For a long stretch of that, it was the only place on Earth where anybody could buy coffee at all. The cargo came down from the mountains. Red cherries picked by hand off terraces, cut into rocks spread out to dry, on flat roofs, turned over by hand, for weeks, then sorted bean by bean. Now the plant itself did not start here. It grows wild in the highlands of Ethiopia across the water. But wild is not a crop. Yemen is where somebody first planted it in rows on a terrace on purpose and worked out how to dry it and sort it and sell it by the ton. Which is why the word on your cup is not the name of a forest, it is the name of a harbor. And this country guarded it the way a country guards a mine. Live seed was not allowed out. Anyone caught trying to smuggle a plant reportedly faced punishment as far as execution. That worked for roughly 2 centuries. Then it broke twice inside 50 years. In 1616, a Dutch trader got a living plant out and into a botanical garden in Amsterdam. From there, it went to Ceylon, then Java, then across to the Americas. The other story is smaller. A pilgrim heading home from Mecca is said to have walked out of Mocha with 7 raw beans hidden on him and planted them in the hills of southern India. Coffee is still growing on those hills today. By the 1730s, the Dutch had stopped buying from Mocha altogether. The harbor emptied. The word stayed on the menu. So the trade left, the plant did not. Go up into those mountains today, and the same old varieties are on the same terraces, in the same rows, worked by the same families. Nothing about that ever stopped. And they kept one part of it the rest of the world never wanted. The husk, the dried skin around the bean, the piece every other country throws out, gets boiled with ginger and cardamom into a drink called quiche. And that is what gets put in front of a guest. The The world bought the seed. The people who grew it kept the fruit. So go up and look at where it actually comes from. At 3 in the afternoon, most of Yemen shuts down. Shops close, offices empty, traffic thins out, and across the country, men sit down on the floor, in rooms with cushions along the walls, and start putting leaves in their mouths. They will be there for 4 or 5 hours. The leaf is called kot. It is a mild stimulant, chewed slowly packed into one cheek, until it bulges and topped up all afternoon. That leaf was on a mountain this morning. It gets picked young, before the sun is high, off terraces that look exactly like the ones coffee grows on, because most of them used to be the ones coffee grew on. By mid-morning, it is tied into bundles, wrapped to hold the moisture in, and going downhill fast. Pickup trucks, motorbikes, men with armfuls of it. By sunset, yesterday's bundle is dry and brown and worth nothing to anybody, which is exactly why it won. By late morning, the Khat market is the busiest place in any Yemeni town, louder than the food market, with more cash moving across it than almost anything else in the country. A coffee farmer waits a year to get paid. A kot farmer gets paid at lunchtime. So over the past few decades, across a great deal of the best farmland in Yemen, the coffee came out and the kot went in. Now count what that costs. A kot bush drinks about 4 times what a coffee tree drinks. It covers around 15% of Yemen's farmland, while using close to 40% of the water the country pulls out of the ground. On mountains, where every bucket has to come from somewhere, the wells go deeper every year. The capital has already been named as a candidate to become the first city of its kind on Earth to run dry. And every man sitting on that floor in the afternoon already knows it. So up in the Haraz Mountains, entire villages have sat down together and agreed to pull the kot out and plant coffee back in its place. They are choosing to get paid once a year instead of every afternoon. That is a decision a farmer makes for somebody who has not been born yet. Look at the bottom of one of these buildings. The ground floor is black volcanic stone, and it has almost no windows in it. 9 floors of decorated brick sit on top of that, covered in white gypsum patterns with stained glass in half-moon shapes above the windows. Nobody lives on that ground floor. It was built for animals and storage, and for keeping everything above it off the earth. This is the old city of Sana'a, and people have been living on this spot for more than 2,500 years. It sits in a mountain valley at about 7,200 feet, roughly 2,000 feet higher than Denver. Inside the walls, there are 103 mosques, 14 public bathhouses, and more than 6,000 houses. All of them were standing before the 11th century. Long before any of it, the accounts describe a palace here called Gumdan that went up 20 floors. People have been building upward in this valley for as long as there has been a valley worth living in. But the part almost nobody notices is not the towers. It is the gardens. Scattered between all that packed brick, there are green squares of vegetables, walled in tucked between the houses. And each quarter of the city was laid out the same way: a mosque, a bathhouse, and a garden sitting together. Now follow the water. Before prayer, everybody washes. That water was collected and run out to the garden where it grew the vegetables the quarter ate. Waste from the bathhouse went to heating water or out to the fields as fertilizer. At 7,000 feet in a dry mountain valley, water is not something that arrives. It is something you already have, and it gets used until there is nothing left in it. Nothing left the block. That system is coming apart now. Concrete houses have gone up in the gaps, the gardens are shrinking under them, and families who cannot afford the upkeep on a 600-year-old tower have moved out to villas past the wall. And the concrete is doing something worse than looking wrong. Salt from the cement leaches into the old earth walls beside it and eats them from the inside. The buildings killing the old city are the new ones. It is laid out on a grid: straight streets, rectangular blocks, towers packed shoulder to shoulder the whole way down them. That is a description of Manhattan. It is also a description of a town in the Yemeni desert that was finished in the 1530s. About 500 buildings standing 5 to 11 floors high, with roughly 7,000 people living inside them. They are the tallest mud buildings anywhere on Earth. An English traveler called it the Manhattan of the desert in the 1930s, and the name stuck, which is slightly backwards, because this place got there first. It sits on a rocky rise in the middle of a wide, dry valley, and it is there for a reason. In 1532, a flood came down that valley and took out most of the settlement that was standing before. What went up afterward was built higher on harder ground behind a wall. So the ground here was the dangerous part. Floods came across it, so did raiding parties. And that leads to the strangest thing about this town, which you will not see from the outside. Some of these towers are joined to each other at the upper floors by doors and raised corridors running from one building into the next. You could move across a good part of the city without ever coming down to street level. If the street was where the trouble was, the street was optional. Now, what is all of this actually made of? Soil, straw, and water mixed and shaped into bricks and left in the sun for a few days. Timber beams across the spans. The ground floors have almost no windows and were built for livestock and grain. That is the entire material list, which means the city is not finished and never will be. Wind and rain eat the outside of it constantly, and the walls have to be coated again by hand over and over with a lime plaster called mashdar. That work happens after the harvest, when there is soil available and there are hands free. So every year, a share of the farmland goes back onto the buildings. Stop doing that for a few seasons, and a 500-year-old tower starts turning back into a field. They went up because the ground was dangerous. In the Western Mountains, people ran into the same problem and answered it differently. They went where the ground stops entirely. There is a rock standing alone in a valley outside the capital, maybe 60 feet, of pale stone with nothing around it. There is a 5-story palace sitting on top of it, fitted to the rock so exactly that the building and the pillar look like one object. That is the most photographed building in this country. It is on the postcards and in every article ever written about Yemen. It was finished in 1920. A ruler wanted a summer house, and it went up on the foundations of something built in 1786. By the standards of this country, the most famous building in Yemen is brand new. The old version of that idea is out west in the mountains, and almost nobody photographs it. About 40 miles from the capital in the Haraz range, there is a village called Al-Hajara, sitting at around 6,100 feet, with roughly 2,500 people in it. The houses run up to 7 stories, and they are not built near the cliff. They are built on the edge of it. Look at a window on the lower floors, and the drop underneath it goes down further than the building goes up. Every stone in those walls came up that mountain on somebody's back. Now here is the part that sounds impossible. There is no mortar in any of it, no cement, no mud, nothing binding one block to the next. Cut stones stacked, fitted tight. That sounds weaker. It is the opposite. A solid wall cracks when the mountain underneath it shifts. Thousands of loose joints shift with it, settle and hold. So compare the two answers this country came up with. The mud city out in the desert survives because people recoat it by hand every single year, and it would go back to being dirt in a few seasons if they stopped. This village survives because nobody has to do anything to it at all. It has been standing since the 12th century. It was a fortress, first watching the road between the capital and the Red Sea coast, and it never emptied out afterward. It became a market town instead. It grows pepper. Families still live in the same stone rooms, and the trail their grandparents used is the trail they still carry water up. The lower floors have almost no windows, and the walls come straight up out of the granite they are sitting on. From across the valley, you cannot find the line where the mountain stops and the village starts. Nearly every man in this country is carrying a knife right now in plain sight. It is curved about the length of a forearm, worn in a decorated belt at the front of the body where everybody can see it. Boys start wearing one somewhere around 15. And it almost never comes out. The blade is not really the point. The handle is. The material it is carved from, the work on it, even the curve of the blade above it, tell everyone in the room what family a man comes from and roughly what he is worth. Many cost thousands of dollars, and they pass from grandfather to grandson. The same dagger shows up on statues of kings here, carved 15 centuries ago, worn at the same angle. So if it is not for fighting, what is it actually for? Start with what happens when two men here have a serious problem. A tribesman near the capital fell into a dispute with his neighbor over land. He took it to the state courts, and 5 years later, he was still waiting. So he walked away from the courts entirely and put it in front of a tribal sheikh instead. It got settled. There is no courtroom in that system. It happens in a room with cushions on the floor. A sheikh hears both sides and gives a ruling, and it holds because everybody present already knows the custom it has to follow. And here is how a session like that opens. Both men take the daggers off their belts and hand them to the sheikh. Think about what that actually is. He is not disarming them. Everyone in the room knows the knife was never going to be used. He is holding the object that says who each of them is, and neither man gets it back until the matter is closed. The rules around it are just as strict. It is considered shameful to go after an opponent in a public market or when he has a woman or a child with him. Harm a woman and the penalty multiplies. So the most visible weapon in Yemen is worn every day by nearly every man, and its main job is to be surrendered. The knife is not what keeps the peace. Having somewhere to put it down is. Everything in this country so far has been the color of dirt. Now go south to a mountain standing over the city of Taiz and look up. It is green from the bottom to the top. Jabal Saba rises to nearly 10,000 feet, and it catches heavy rain twice a year while the country underneath it stays dry. Rain lands here, and it does not land like that anywhere nearby. The road up climbs 27 miles through 55 hairpin turns. Within living memory, there was no road at all. And every morning women come down off that mountain into Taiz to sell. They arrive in bright patterned dress that is recognized across the whole country, carrying produce grown at 9,000 feet, and by midday they are working the markets of the third largest city in Yemen. Then they climb back. Now watch yourself draw the wrong conclusion. The obvious reading is hardship. A woman hauling a load up and down a mountain that takes 55 switchbacks to drive. Ask people in Taiz, and they will tell you the families up on that mountain are the well-off ones. 2 rains a year on the best soil in the region, and stone houses 4 and 5 stories high that were famous across Yemen long before anybody cut a road up there. The climb is not the price of being poor. It is the reason they are not. And there is a second half to that which you already know. A great deal of what grows on the wettest mountain in Yemen is cut. The one place in this country that reliably gets water is the place growing the crop that drinks the most of it, because that is the crop that pays on the day it is cut. Everything in this country goes up. Some of it has to come back down every single morning. There is a town out in this valley with 365 mosques in it. One for every day of the year, and you can walk from one end of it to the other in a single morning. Nobody needs that many mosques. What that number actually tells you is that this was never a trading town. It was a school, and what the school produced was people who left. Students came here from East Africa and from as far east as Indonesia. They sat with teachers for years. Then men from this valley started going the other way. They crossed the Indian Ocean, the way men from Ireland crossed the Atlantic, India, East Africa, Malaysia, Singapore, and above all, Indonesia. They traded, they married, they taught, and most of them never came back. You can see the money they sent home. Scattered through this valley, there are white mansions with carved verandas and colored tile that look like they were lifted off a street in Southeast Asia, because in a sense, they were. They were built by families who got rich 4,000 miles from here. You can see the names too. Open a phone book in Jakarta, and the family names out of this valley are still in it. The largest Muslim population on earth is in Indonesia, and a great deal of how the religion arrived and settled there came through people who trained in this town. A place you can cross in a morning helped shape a country of hundreds of millions on the far side of an ocean. And the tallest thing in it is still made of mud. That minaret runs about 150 feet, roughly a 15-story building put up in 1914 out of sun-dried brick and it is one of the tallest earth structures standing anywhere. The traffic runs both directions now. Students from Indonesia and Malaysia fly into a desert town in a country most of the world has written off to study in the same rooms. Because the last thing this place keeps is the graves. Tarim holds the largest Sayyid cemetery in southern Yemen, and the family records attached to it are not museum pieces, they are working documents. A family in Jakarta, or on the Kenyan coast, opens those records to find out exactly who they came from. And the line ends here, in the dirt of a valley their great-grandfathers sailed away from and never saw again. The staircase is the worst part of the house, and it is also the thing that decides everything inside it. It is narrow, it is steep, and it turns back on itself the whole way up. Every single thing in that building, every sack of grain, every jug of water, every stick of furniture came up those stairs on somebody's shoulder. So start at the bottom and go up and watch what gets put where. Ground floor, no windows, animals and storage, and a heavy wooden door. Next floor up, more storage, and the business end of the house. Above that, the kitchen. Above that, bedrooms floor after floor of them. And somewhere down, in that lower half, is where the oldest member of the family sleeps. Not out of neglect, because the stairs are past them, and everybody knows it. Now keep climbing past all of it to the very top. There is one room up there, and it is called the Mafraj. It is small, somewhere between 130 and 200 square feet, which is smaller than a lot of American living rooms. It is also the most decorated room in the building, cushions along all four walls, and windows on every side with a kamaria above each one, a half-moon panel of colored glass set into carved gypsum. Every one of them cut and fitted by hand, and there is no factory anywhere that makes them. By the middle of the afternoon, that room is full of colored light lying across the floor. And nothing useful happens in it. Nobody cooks in there, nobody sleeps in there. This is the room where men sit down at 3 in the afternoon with a bundle of cot and talk until the light goes, and it is the room a guest gets taken to. which is the answer to the whole thing. In a house where every floor above the animals had to be earned by carrying it up a staircase, the room they put furthest from the ground is the hardest to reach, the most expensive to decorate, and the only one with light coming in from 4 directions. They gave it to sitting and talking. And in summer, when it is too hot inside, the family goes 1 flight higher and sleeps on the roof out in the open above the whole city. So this country did not build upward to get away from the ground. It built upward to get to that room. Everything in this country went up because there was nowhere else for it to go. Terraces climbed the mountains because the mountains were the only soil. Towers went up in the desert because the valley floor flooded. Villages went up the cliffs because a cliff can be held. And inside every one of those buildings, the best room got carried as high as the staircase would take it. Which brings us back to the question we started with. Not how any of this got built, how so much of it is still standing. The answer is not that it was built well. It is that none of it was ever finished. Every year, somebody recoats a mud wall. Every season, somebody restacks a terrace. A stone village survives by shifting with the mountain instead of fighting it. So Yemen is not standing because of what it built. It is standing because people are still in it. Which is the part now under pressure. Concrete filling the gaps. Wells going deeper every season. Families walking away from houses that cost more to keep than they can carry. Go up to that top room at the end of the day. The colored glass drops the last of the light across the floor, and then it goes. Somebody cut that window by hand in a country with no flat ground 8 floors above the animals. None of it was ever cheap either. For 3,000 years, caravans crossed this desert carrying a cargo worth more by weight than gold, and this country sat directly on the road they had to take. Then the world found another way around. Rome had a name for this place. Not Yemen. The Romans called this end of the peninsula Arabia Felix, which translates as Fortunate Arabia, the lucky one. They meant it. This corner of the desert was one of the wealthiest places in the ancient world, and everybody knew it. Out in the sand, there is a dam that is about 2,700 years old, a third of a mile across 50 feet high, and it watered an area bigger than Manhattan, in a place that gets almost no rain. Fields out there were harvested twice a year, grapes, wheat, barley, dates, in a desert. That was paid for by 2 things that grew here, and almost nowhere else, and that every temple, from Egypt to Rome to Persia, had to burn. Rome wanted it badly enough to send an army in 25 before Christ. The army got to the walls, took heavy losses, and went home with nothing. So, how does the luckiest land on earth end up as the most dangerous country in the world? Here is the part nobody explains. Yemen was never rich because of what was underneath it. It was rich because of where it sat. Whatever the world wanted had to come through here. And a route can move. It has moved 4 times. Each time, this country lost more than money. There is a day out at that dam when the water stopped and the kingdom that built it scattered. There is a port down on the coast that was in the 1950s the second busiest refueling harbor on the planet after New York. 6,000 ships a year. Almost nobody in the world remembers it now. There are men still cutting frankincense trees by hand for a market that mostly stopped existing. And out in the eastern desert, there is a hole in the ground 300 feet deep that people have called the Well of Hell for centuries, and that nobody had been to the bottom of until a few years ago. Tell us in the comments where you are watching from tonight, and if you want to keep seeing the parts of the world that never make the news, subscribe and come with us. This country has been left behind 4 separate times. You have almost certainly only heard about the 4th. You already know 2 of the 3. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Most people hear that and picture 3 chests of treasure with the gold as the real present and the other 2 as something ceremonial. Frankincense and myrrh are tree sap. And nobody has ever managed to farm either one. 5,000 years of trade, and it is still cut off wild trees standing wherever they happen to come up. In the world, that story comes from this stuff was worth about what the gold was worth. Getting it is not complicated. You walk to a small, twisted, drought-beaten tree and cut a shallow line in the bark. The tree bleeds a pale, milky sap to seal the wound. You leave it about 10 days while that hardens into lumps shaped like tears, and then you come back and scrape them off. That is the whole process, and it has not changed in 5 millennia. The supply was so far away that Herodotus reported the trees were guarded by small winged serpents in different colors, and educated Greeks accepted it because not one of them had ever seen the trees. So why did it matter enough to bother? Because the smoke was not decoration. It was the mechanism. Egypt burned it in temples and used it on the dead. Rome burned it at funerals, at ceremonies in the streets, constantly in quantities that got Alexander the Great told off by his own tutor for wasting it. In the 1st century, something in the range of 3,000 tons of the stuff moved around the Roman Empire every year. And nearly all of it came off one stretch of hills in southern Arabia. Which is why Greek and Roman writers kept reaching for the same word for this place across 300 years: fortunate. They were not describing the landscape, they were describing the balance sheet. Now come forward 2,000 years. The entire global trade in frankincense and myrrh today runs around 1,500 tons a year, and most of that comes out of Somalia. So the Roman world alone moved roughly twice as much in a year as the whole planet trades now. And Yemen does not export it anymore, Yemen imports it. Go out to those hills and the trees are still there. Men still cut them. The sap still beads up and hardens and drops onto the ground. In a lot of places, it is just left where it falls. So, how did the road get here in the first place? The money never piled up where the trees were. It piled up at the toll gate, every load of frankincense in this country had to be carried into one city and brought in through one single gate, and leaving the main road while carrying it was a capital offense. At that gate, priests took 1/10 of every load for their god measured out, rather than weighed before any of it could be sold. So a town sat out at the edge of the desert, getting rich off other people's cargo. And what they spent it on was a wall. Not a defensive wall, a wall across a valley. It ran about 1/3 of a mile from one hillside to the other, and over the centuries, it was raised until it stood roughly 4 stories high, packed earth and rubble, faced with cut stone, with stone sluice gates built into both ends. Here is what it was for. Rain falls on those highlands 2 or 3 times a year. When it comes hard, runs straight down the valley into the sand, and is gone inside a day. 2 or 3 storms had to feed a kingdom for 12 months. That wall is what made the difference. It caught the flood and held it. When the farmers wanted water, they opened the sluices, let out what they needed, and shut them again. 24,000 acres of desert were farmed off that one wall. Barley, dates, grapes, harvested twice a year on the edge of the largest sand desert on Earth. Enough to feed something like 50,000 people. The kingdom that ran it is the one the Bible calls Sheba. Its queen is supposed to have traveled to Jerusalem with a caravan of gold and spices, and whether she ever existed is still argued over. The wealth behind that story is not. And a structure like that has one problem. It is never finished. Silt builds up behind it. Floods tear at it. Every generation has to go back in and dig it out and shore it up. And the inscriptions carved into those sluice gates are largely a record of exactly that, kings pulling thousands of men off their work to repair the thing again. One repair in the 5th century took 20,000 of them. Which tells you what that dam actually was. It was not a feat of engineering. It was a bill paid over and over for more than 1,000 years, and every camel that walked through that gate bought another season of water. Go out there now, and the earth is gone. Wind and flood took all of it. The stone gates are still standing wide open over a valley with nothing behind them. Everybody wants to know how the dam broke. Flood, earthquake, or in one old story, rats chewing through it. Take your pick, because it broke plenty of times. That is the wrong question. That dam had been breaking and getting repaired for over 1,000 years. 20,000 men on one job. Entire rains spent hauling silt out of it. The real question is why one particular time nobody came back. And the answer was already sitting at the gate. Fewer camels. Not none. Just fewer season after season, in a way that took decades to become obvious. The tithe came in lighter. The road north got quieter. Nobody in that city could have told you why, because the thing that changed was 2,000 miles away and out at sea. Greek and Roman captains had worked out the monsoon. Ride the wind out in one season, ride it home in the next, straight from Egypt to India and back. They did not need Arabia anymore. They could sail past it. Every toll gate on that road became optional, including this one. Then the other half arrived, and it was worse. Rome turned Christian. Cremation, which had burned incense by the ton, gave way to burial. And early Christians wanted nothing to do with frankincense because burning it was what pagans did on an altar. The largest customer on earth stopped buying. Out in the hills, none of that was visible. Men still cut the trees. The sap still hardened. The sacks still came down into town. They just sat there. Now watch what that does to a wall. A wall that size runs on traffic. Less traffic, less tithe. Less tithe, smaller repair. Smaller repair, and the next flood takes a little more than the last one did. By the middle of the 5th century, the breaches were regular. Around the year 570, it went for good. The water ran out into the sand and did not come back. The gardens dried. 24,000 acres turned back into desert, and the families who worked it moved north and up into the mountains, and the center of this country shifted away from Marib and never returned. Walk it today, and there are 7 stone pillars standing in open sand. That is what is left above ground of the Temple of Awam, and it sat at the middle of everything. The Quran records the ending as a flood sent against the people of Saba for their ingratitude. The mechanism was quieter. Nobody stopped believing in the dam. They stopped being able to afford it. And that was only the first time the world went around this country instead of through it. Out in the eastern desert, near the border with Oman, there is a hole in the ground. Not a cave mouth in a cliff. A hole in flat open desert, almost perfectly round, about 100 feet across. It goes down 367 feet, and it gets wider as it goes. At the bottom, it is nearly 400 feet across. The whole thing is shaped like a bottle, buried upright in the sand. For as long as anyone can say, people here have kept away from it. The stories are consistent. A prison for jinn, a gate to the underworld, something down there that lets out a smell. Not superstition in the vague sense either. People do not walk up to the edge. A few amateurs had climbed partway in over the years. Nobody had ever reached the bottom. Then, in September of 2021, a team of 10 cavers from Oman drove out there with a pulley system, and 8 of them went over the lip and down. This is what was waiting. Snakes, frogs, beetles, the remains of dead birds that had fallen in and never got out. Stalagmites standing on the floor, cave pearls scattered across it, gray and lime green, each one built up ring by water, dripping in the same spot for thousands of years. No jinn and no real smell. But about 200 feet down, they found something that matters more than any of that. Water is coming out of the walls. The upper rock is porous, so rain soaks through it, hits a harder layer, and runs sideways into the shaft. It comes out of the rock face in 4 separate waterfalls, each of them falling around 150 feet. Think about that for a second. A few hundred miles west of that hole, a kingdom of 50,000 people ended because the water stopped. And out here, the whole time, water has been falling out of solid rock into the dark in a country that has never once had enough of it. Nobody knew, nobody looked. This place has never been short of things worth having. The second time they saw it coming and could not stop it. For 2 centuries, this country controlled the world's coffee. Then a Dutch trader carried out a living plant, and by one account, a pilgrim walked out with 7 seeds, and inside 100 years, the crop was growing in Java in India and across the Americas. The word stayed on the menu. The trade did not. Now the third time, and this one is close enough to touch. Down at the southern tip of the country, a volcano collapsed into the sea a long time ago, and what it left behind is a ring of rock around a huge basin of sheltered deep water. Aden, one of the largest natural harbors anywhere on the planet, sitting exactly where the Red Sea opens into the Indian Ocean. For most of history, that was useful, but not decisive. Then, in 1869, the Suez Canal opened, and the distance from London to Bombay dropped from about 10,700 miles to 6,200. Every ship on that new route had to pass Aden. And a ship on a long haul needs fuel. Coal at first stockpiled by the harbor, then oil from 1919 onward, and a refinery built right there in the 1950s. By that decade, Aden was handling over 6,300 ships a year. 17 a day, every day, in a harbor at the bottom of Arabia. Stand on the headland above that harbor in 1955, and the water below you is full. Freighters at anchor waiting their turn, barges running cargo out to ships too big to come alongside, oil lighters working the tankers, smaller wooden dhows moving between all of it, doing the coastal runs the way they always had. On shore, the fuel. Coal stacks first, then storage tanks, and a refinery and trucks moving between them all day. And behind the docks, the town. Crews came off those ships with money and a few hours, and the streets filled up to meet them. Cameras, watches, radios, cloth, whiskey, perfume. Signs in Arabic and English, money changers. Men from Britain, India, Somalia, and Greece in one small strip of shops at the bottom of Arabia, which made it the second busiest refueling port in the entire world. The only one ahead of it was New York. It was also the fourth largest duty-free shopping port on the planet. Then in the same year, two completely unrelated things happened. The British left, and the Suez Canal shut. With the canal closed, anything bound for Europe had to go the long way around the bottom of Africa, and that route does not pass anywhere near Aden. The traffic stopped more or less overnight. The canal reopened 8 years later. By then, the shipping lines had built their schedules around other ports, and they did not come back. Nothing had gone wrong with the harbor. It is still one of the finest natural harbors in the world, still in exactly the same place, still deep enough for anything afloat. It just stopped being on the way to anywhere. And in our lifetime, that is about to happen to this country one more time. At its narrowest, the gap between Yemen and Africa is about 20 miles. That is it. 20 miles of water, and almost everything moving by sea between Europe and Asia has to thread through it. Roughly 12% of world trade goes through that gap. It is the same water that made Aden the second busiest port on Earth, and the same corridor that fed the caravan road 2,000 years before that. The gate has not moved in 3,000 years, 20 miles wide with Yemen sitting on the edge of it. Then, in late 2023, ships in that strait started getting attacked. The reasons belong to a much larger story than this one, and it is still going on as you watch this. What matters here is what the shipping companies did next. They went around Africa. And that was the fourth time. The big container lines pulled their Asia to Europe services out of the Red Sea and sent them the long way down past the Cape of Good Hope, which is exactly the route everybody used before the Suez Canal existed. 10 to 14 extra days at sea on every single trip. They did it anyway. Traffic through the Suez Canal fell by half or more. Which is the same thing that happened in the 5th century and in the 1600s and in 1967. Nothing broke here. The trees kept producing, the harbor stayed deep, the strait never closed for a day. Somebody a long way away decided the detour was cheaper than the risk, and the traffic went with them. Except this time, there is something you can stand and watch. Go down to that coast on a clear day, and they are right there. Container ships out on the horizon, stacked 6 high, moving north in a line. For 3,000 years, that line of ships was the entire reason anybody here was rich. It is still going past. It just does not turn in anymore. Before all this, you could have driven past Marib without noticing. Fewer than 40,000 people, a dusty town out east, sitting next to the ruins we started with. Then from around 2015, people started arriving. Families from Sana'a, from Hodeidah, from Taiz and the north, pickup trucks with mattresses, roped on top water tanks, children sitting on the load. They kept coming. The count is now over 1 million displaced people in that governorate. Some in tent camps out in open desert. Most not in camps at all, but renting rooms, doubling up and building on the edge of town. A town of 40,000. Why there? Water. In the 1980s, a new dam went up about 2 miles from the ruins of the old one. It was paid for by a ruler of the United Arab Emirates, whose own family is said to have come out of this valley generations back after the water failed. When the reservoir behind it filled, something happened that nobody quite expected. Old wells out in the desert below started coming back. Canals that had been dry sand for centuries had water moving through them again. So the place 1 million people ran to is the exact valley that emptied out when the dam broke, refilled by the descendants of the people who left when it did. There is a part of this that almost nobody outside Yemen knows. Marib is now one of the fastest growing places in the country. Go and look at it. Streets that were not there 10 years ago, and concrete going up on ground that was open desert when this war started. None of which anybody chose. Every one of those families would rather be at home, and a great many of them are living in conditions that should not be acceptable anywhere. But for 3,000 years, this valley got rich off people who were passing through. It is finally growing because of people who stopped. Nobody is waiting at the bottom of the hill anymore. There is no caravan forming up, no priest measuring out a tenth, no gate, no tax, no ship in a harbor with a hold to fill. The men still go up. It starts early before the heat on a slope with no path worth the name. The trees are scattered and low, growing out of stone, in places where nothing else has bothered, and getting between them takes most of the morning. He walks past the first ones. That is the part nobody expects. Most of the trees he passes, he leaves alone. This one was cut last season and needs the year off. That one is thin and struggling and will not take a blade again for a long time. He knows which is which because his father knew and told him standing on this hillside. At the one, he stops, for the old cuts are still there in the bark, healed over a line of them going back years. He makes a new one just below. And then nothing happens. Not for about 10 days, while the tree does the only thing it can do about a wound and seals it. He will come back for that. When he does, what is waiting is a row of hard, pale beads stuck to the bark, and he works them loose and lets them drop into a sack and moves on to the next tree and the next. By the end of it, the sack is not heavy. A whole season for a whole family goes down the hill in the back of a pickup truck. "2,000 years ago, 200 camels would leave this coast loaded, and the tolls on one of them cost more than a man earned in 2 years. That sack goes to a local market now, or across the border to Oman, or nowhere at all. The trees are not doing well either. Every cut is a wound, and drought and grazing do the rest. One of the main frankincense species is projected to lose half its population inside the next 20 years. The country that once supplied the entire world now imports the stuff. What keeps anybody climbing up there? Because those trees are not a business, they are property. A particular tree belongs to a particular family, and it has for as long as anyone can name. Which trees are yours? Which ones get rested this year? How deep to cut, and where, and how to read a tree that is struggling. All of it gets handed down the same way a house does. Stop going up, and you do not just lose the income, you lose the claim. And that more than anything else in this video is the answer to the question everybody asks about Yemen. 4 times the world changed its route. 4 times this country was left holding something nobody wanted to buy anymore. Nobody left. The families who were on that hillside when Rome was burning 3,000 tons a year are the families on it now, with worse tools, no buyers, and trees that may not outlive their grandchildren. Tomorrow morning, they will go up and cut the same trees again. Rome had a word for this place, and it was not a mistake. Fortunate Arabia. For a few hundred years, that was probably the most accurate thing any outsider ever wrote about this coast. But look at what the word was actually describing. Not the soil which is thin, not the rain which barely comes, not even the resin which grows just as well across the water in Somalia. It was describing a position on a map. The fact that anything moving between Europe and Asia had to come this way and pay somebody here on the way through. That is the most valuable thing a country can have. It is also the only thing a country cannot own. A route belongs to whoever is traveling on it. 4 times the travelers chose differently. Captains learned the monsoon and sailed past. Seeds went out in a pocket and grew somewhere else. A canal shut, and the world went around Africa. A strait got dangerous, and the containers went the long way. Not one of those 4 decisions was made in Yemen. So the answer to how the luckiest land on earth ended up here turns out to be simple and a little bleak. It was never luck, it was traffic. 3,000 years of other people's cargo built this country, made it famous, and then left it. The families did not go anywhere. And what is left, now that the road has moved, is the part that was always actually theirs. Terraces cut into a mountain by hand, 2 stone gates still standing at either end of a valley with nothing behind them. A tower of mud that gets rebuilt every year by the people living in it. And a family that knows exactly which trees on which hillside belong to them. Nobody is going to get rich off any of that. They are keeping it anyway. A place that seems to belong to another planet. An island isolated in the middle of the Indian Ocean, where life has been evolving by its own rules for millions of years. Here, trees bleed dark red when their bark is cut. Trees with trunks shaped like giant bottles grow straight out of bare rock. Plants that once filled the markets of ancient Egypt, Rome, Arabia, and India still grow wild across the mountains. For many visitors, Socotra does not feel like Earth at all. It feels like stepping into a science fiction movie. But the strangest thing about this island is not its trees, it is the people. Thousands of people still live here on an island that gives them almost nothing to work with. Their children play on beaches with wooden boats they built themselves. Before sunrise, their fathers push the real boats into the Arabian Sea. And every year, for nearly 4 months, the wind cuts them off from the rest of the world. No boats arrive, no planes land, nobody leaves. Most people know Socotra as the alien island. Almost nobody asks how anyone actually lives here, yet people have called this island home for thousands of years. Empires found it: Greek sailors, Roman merchants, Arab navigators, Portuguese soldiers. They all came looking for something: dragon's blood, frankincense, aloe. They all took something away. None of them ever took the island. And a place nobody takes over is a place nobody rewrites. Which leaves a much more interesting question. What happens to a place when the outside world never truly changes it? There are families here that visitors quietly feel sorry for. Those visitors are wrong. Before we go in, tell us in the comments where you are watching from tonight. And if you want to see the parts of this world nobody films, subscribe and come with us. There is something these people carry that cannot be printed, cannot be copied, and disappears the moment they stop speaking it. And after dark, some of them climb high onto the ridges above the sea and stretch nets between two poles. There is nothing up there to catch. The question was never what Socotra is. It is how anyone has managed to build a life here. Everyone who comes here photographs the tree. Almost nobody photographs the man who works it. He goes up with a blade and knocks it against the trunk. What comes off is not liquid. It is dark red and dry, and it falls in crumbs into a small pouch held under his hand. That resin hardened on the bark months ago. He is not opening the tree this morning. He is collecting what it already gave. To reach it, he walked past things that grow nowhere else on the planet. Trunks swollen at the base like glass bottles, storing their own water, rooted into bare rock with no soil worth the name. Frankincense holding onto a ledge. Aloe growing wild across open ground, the way weeds grow in a lawn. That is not a few odd plants. Of every 3 plant species on this island, one of them grows here and in no other country on Earth. Which is worth stopping on. Why here? Because nothing ever arrived to interrupt it. Cut a piece of land off from the world for long enough, and everything living on it has to solve its own problems alone. And once you see that, you start seeing it everywhere. Go smaller. 9 out of every 10 reptiles here, down to the geckos sitting on that bark, live on this island and on no other ground on the planet. Go bigger, and it gets stranger still, because there is almost nothing bigger. Socotra has no native land mammals, none at all except bats. Which should stop you, because there are goats all over this island. Every one of them arrived by boat. So did every cow, every camel, every donkey. And if none of those belong here either, then there is one more arrival that nobody ever counts. The people came the same way, which leaves the island itself as the only thing here that is actually from here. So what does a tree like this give a family that landed long after it did? The fruit goes to the animals. The shade is where a herd waits out the worst hours of the day. And when a hand gets opened up out here, the red goes straight on to the cut. The rest goes down the mountain in sacks and crosses the water to the mainland and to India. There is one more thing about the tree he is standing under. That crown above him is not shaped the way it is for looks. Fog comes off the sea and crosses these highlands on most mornings of the year, and a canopy built like that pulls water straight out of the air. Then it drops shade onto the ground it just watered. Some mornings the ground never gets wet. The tree drinks anyway. These trees take well over a century to fill out. The ones on this plateau average around 300 years old. Most were already standing before the United States existed. Nobody has ever planted one and lived long enough to see it finish. So he does not come back next season. He comes back in 5 years, and nobody makes him work a tree harder than that, and it stops giving, and the replacement will not be ready for anyone alive today. He is protecting a harvest he will never collect. He is not working a crop, he is taking a turn. If you want to keep seeing places nobody films, subscribe and hit the like button. That is what gets us out to the next one. Now a tree up here can afford to wait 300 years. A family cannot wait until next season. And before the sun is up tomorrow, the same men who work the resin will be down at the water pushing wooden boats out past the break. Catching fish is the easy part. Nobody out here worries about whether the sea will produce. The water around this island holds more than 700 kinds of fish. Men push wooden boats off the sand before sunrise, come back by mid-morning with kingfish and tuna, and by noon it is laid out on tables in Hadibo, the only place here that could reasonably be called a town. That has never been the problem. Now look at what is underneath the fish on the plate. Rice. Rice does not grow on this island, neither does wheat. There is almost no farmland out here at all, no soil worth the name, not enough rain, and nothing like the flat, open ground a crop needs. So the rice arrived by ship. So did the flour, the sugar, the cooking oil, and every drop of fuel burning on Socotra, which is the part nobody expects about the most isolated inhabited island in the Indian Ocean. It does not feed itself. It feeds itself halfway. You can watch the other half happen on one street. A fisherman sells his morning catch at the market, then carries the money a few doors down and buys a sack of rice that crossed 240 miles of open sea to get here. He pulled half of dinner out of the water himself. The other half he had to buy off a boat. And the boat only comes when the sea allows it. You can see people planning around that. When a shipment lands, Families fill their gas bottles, whether they are low or not. Not because anything is wrong, because nobody knows when the next one gets in. The rest of what they eat walks down out of the mountains. Because this is really two islands. On the coast, families fish. Up in the highlands, families move with goats and cows and sheep, and there are camels in both places. Milk and ghee and meat come down. Fish goes up. That trade is nearly everything an islander eats that did not come off a boat. Which is why goats walk down the middle of the street in Hadibo like they own the lease. And down on the sand, the smallest ones are already building the thing they will spend their lives in. Wooden boats cut and nailed together by hand, dragged through the shallows on a string. Those are not toys shaped like something else. They are scale models of their father's work, and the boys building them already know which of the two islands they belong to. But every part of this, the fish and the rice and the fuel and the boats, rests on the same water. That sea feeds them, and for a long stretch of every year it closes. Right now, every boat on this island is out of the water. Not one of them is damaged. They are turned over on the sand above the tide line, and they are going to stay there. At the end of May, the wind swings around to the southwest, and it does not let up until September. Ships cannot berth. The fishing stops. The deliveries stop. The sack of rice a family bought in April has to reach September on its own. There are weeks out here when the only things moving along the coast are the waves and the sand. The heat comes with it. Over 100 degrees, with the humidity sitting on top of that. And a herd still has to go somewhere for 4 months. You take it indoors. There are caves on this island wide enough to hold people and their animals together, and herders move into them for the monsoon and wait the season out under the rock. And you have already seen what that wind does. Everybody has. On the northeast coast, there are white dunes stacked hundreds of feet high against the cliffs running right up the rock. Sand does not normally climb a mountain. Gravity usually wins. That sand came up off the sea floor, and the monsoon pushed it uphill 3 months a year for longer than anyone here can count. Tourists come here to photograph the dunes. They are really photographing the wind. And that wind did something else for this island that nobody here ever asked it to do. "4 months a year, for as long as anyone can measure, nothing could reach this place. No developer, no fleet. nobody in a hurry. The monsoon is a large part of why Socotra still looks like Socotra. But 4 months with nothing coming in is still a test of what a household already has. And a household here keeps its wealth in a form that visitors do not recognize even when they are standing in the middle of it. Walk through a village on this island, and you will see exactly what almost every visitor sees. Low houses of stone and bare concrete, dust, plastic bottles flattened into the sand, children in clothes that have already been handed down twice, no shop fronts, no signs, nothing that looks like money. People fly in, look at that, and quietly feel sorry for everyone standing in it. They are looking straight at the wealth and not recognizing it. Start with the ground under their feet. Almost nobody on Socotra pays rent. Land out here is held the way it has been held for centuries passed down, inside families, and divided between them by custom not bought and sold on a market. So a family in a house like that is not a family that could not afford better. It is a family that owns the house, the ground under it, and usually a stretch of the hillside behind it. Then there is what is moving around outside. The herd is the savings account. You do not deposit it, and you do not withdraw it. It feeds itself on ground the family already owns. It produces milk and meat without anyone selling anything. It breeds, which is the only interest rate out here. And when a family genuinely needs money, a piece of it gets converted. Which brings us to the one thing they really are short of. Cash. There is not much of it moving out here, and it matters on exactly one occasion when a ship comes in with rice and flour and fuel on it. It is not that these families have nothing. It is that almost nothing they own can be spent. And it turns out that is not the worst arrangement in the world. This island belongs to Yemen. 10 years ago, the currency there traded at around 200 to the dollar. Last year, it went past 2,700. Anyone holding their savings as money watched most of it vanish. Nobody's goats got cheaper. Where you live, wealth is a number that sits still and does nothing for you until you move it somewhere. Here, wealth eats, breeds, and walks itself up the hill every morning. And the largest share of it, the part nearly every family on this island is quietly counting on, is the animal you have been stepping around since we landed. There are a great deal more of them here than there are people. There are 4 of them for every single person living on this island. Goats. On the roads, on the low walls, straight down the middle of Hadibo and halfway up rock faces, you would need both hands to climb. And almost nobody is hurting them. They get let out in the morning, and they go. Across the plateau, down the dry riverbeds, up onto ledges all day. Most of them find their own way home at dusk. No fences worth the name, no dogs, nobody walking behind them. So why are there so many? Because of something we already found out. No wolves out here, no wild cats, nothing on this island that was ever going to take a goat. Socotra has no native land mammals at all. Islanders brought the animal ashore and set it down in a place where nothing was waiting for it. In the 1950s, there were somewhere around 45,000 head of livestock on Socotra. By the end of that century, there were more than 220,000. 5 times the mouths on an island that did not get any bigger. And a goat will eat almost anything. In town, they eat paper, cardboard boxes straight off the street. Out here it is, leaves, shoots, bark and seedlings. Anything soft enough and low enough to reach. On a green island that is not a problem. This is not a green island. You can see what happened without anyone explaining it to you. Just look at where things still grow. Not on the open ground, on ledges, on the far side of ravines. Across a great deal of Socotra, the plants that made it are the ones growing out of a crack in a cliff face with nothing underneath them but air. A goat cannot stand on air. Near the top of one of these mountains, there is a pool of fresh water sitting in bare rock, looking out over the whole northern coast. On an island this dry that should not be there. There is no river on Socotra that stays full all year. What there is instead is riverbeds, and most of the time you can walk straight down the middle of one. Rain does come in short seasons, and the limestone drinks it almost at once. The water goes underground and comes back only where the mountain allows it. Pools stacked one above another in narrow canyons. Springs at the foot of the high ground. A handful of riverbeds that hold on long after the rest have gone dry. So you do not build where the view is good out here. You build where the water comes up. And a dry year is not an inconvenience. There is no reservoir, no pipeline, no truck bringing water in from somewhere else. Which strangely may leave this island in better shape than the mainland. 700 miles to the northwest, the capital of this country has been pulling water out of the ground faster than the ground can put it back. People have been warning for years that Sana'a could become the first capital city on Earth to run dry. Deep groundwater was never something communities out here depended on. They had something else. On most mornings of the year, the cloud comes in off the sea and settles onto the high ground, and everything up there wakes up soaked. Down at the coast, nobody sees a drop of it. For 2,000 years, men have climbed this mountain to leave behind almost nothing at all. From the beach on the northeast coast, it is 2 to 3 hours on foot, straight up. Nobody does the walk alone. A local guide takes you the same way local guides have taken people up there for as long as people have been coming. The entrance is a dark gap in a limestone wall. Turn around at the mouth of it, and the whole northern coast is laid out below you with open water past that. Every ship heading north for the Red Sea came along that water. Because Socotra was never the destination, it was the stop. The route ran between India and the Red Sea, and ships pulled in here for water, for resin, for a night out of the weather. Then they went north with frankincense and myrrh up toward the ports of southern Arabia, along the coast of the country this island still belongs to. Now go back inside. More than a mile of passage runs into the rock past stone columns that took longer to form than anything human beings have ever built. And far enough in there is writing on the walls. Nearly 250 inscriptions and drawings put there in charcoal, in chalk, in mud, and scratched into the stone with something sharp. Most were left by men from India. The rest came from Greece, from Ethiopia, from Syria, and from what is now Afghanistan. 700 years of them, starting before Rome had an emperor. So think about what ought to be on a wall like that. Cargo counts, prayers for the crossing, warnings about the reefs, or directions for whoever came next. Almost none of that is there. Nearly every one of those men wrote the same two things: his name and his father's name. That is all of it. A sailor crossed half the Indian Ocean, climbed a mountain, walked more than a mile into the dark, with a lamp wrote down who he was and who he came from, and went back down to his ship. Every name on that wall belongs to somebody who left. The people who stayed left no names at all, not one line anywhere from any of those centuries. If you have made it this far into the video, you are in a fairly small group. Subscribe and stay with us, because the reason they never wrote anything down is the strangest thing on this island. There are old men up in these mountains who can tell you exactly which cloud is coming over the ridge. Not because they can see any farther than you can, because they have a different word for it. And not one of those words can be written down. Not because he forgot the letters, because his language never had any. It is called Sokotri, and it was here long before Arabic was. For thousands of years, it has moved the same way, from one voice to the next. So listen to what a language like that bothered to name. Different clouds, different rains. Not because anyone here enjoyed inventing words, because missing the difference could cost you a season. A separate word for each stage of growth of the plants a goat will eat, so a herder standing on a hillside can say exactly what condition that hillside is in. Another for every stage of a goat's life. Another for every step of turning milk into something that keeps. If Sokotri gives 5 things, 5 different names, it is usually because treating them as one thing would have been a mistake. Lose those words, and you lose the instructions with them. Poetry here was ordinary speech too, not something saved for ceremonies. Islanders still gather once a year to stand up and recite new poems in Sokotri.
Hello, nice to see you.
But school happens in Arabic. So does government, and so does business down on the coast. Children grow up speaking both, and then live most of their adult lives in one. The oldest Sokotri words are already the hardest to explain, even to a Sokotri speaker in his 40s. Linguists now consider the language severely endangered.
It's a good price.
2 scholars have each built an alphabet for it out of modified Arabic letters.
$4, yeah? Yeah.
Neither one caught on,
Okay, alright, perfect. I'll give now.
so the language stayed where it had always lived, not on paper, in people. The visitors wrote on stone. The islanders wrote on nothing at all. Stone outlasts everybody, memory does not. You come up the track to a house with dust all over you. Someone waves you in. Shoes come off at the door. You sit down on the floor and a large plate goes into the middle of the room. Rice and fish, and a hand gestures at it. Nobody has asked your name. The questions come afterward. They always come afterward. Visitors read this as good manners, and it is that. But it is also something harder. Think about where you are. If your truck breaks an axle out on the plateau, there is no service to call. If you get sick 2 hours from the one town, there is no ambulance coming for you. If the weather closes in, there is no boat for anybody for 4 months. The nearest house is the entire safety system. So the stranger at the door is not really a guest. One day he probably will be a man in trouble, and everyone here knows it, because everyone here becomes that man eventually. Nobody keeps score either. Next time, it is your turn. It also explains something visitors notice immediately and rarely understand. Petty theft is widely described as rare out here. Travelers leave gear sitting in open camps overnight and come back to find it exactly where they put it. On an island where everybody knows everybody and where you may need any one of them inside the year, a reputation is the most expensive thing a person owns. And out here, yours reaches the next village before you do. He was born in a cave. Not visited one, lived in one. The first roof over his head was a limestone cliff above the sea. Then he spent most of his life getting away from that, and then he moved back.
This is your home?
Yeah, I sleep here. Tourists give me this. You're welcome. Yeah, this is my home.
Start with the cave. On Socotra, a cave is not a ruin. It is still a house. Herders still take their animals into them when the monsoon arrives and wait the season out under the rock. His family kept goats. That was the house. Then he came down the way almost everyone here has come down over the past 50 years. A village, a building with a door, neighbors. And then tourists started arriving on the island and he went back up. He cleared the cave out and set it up the way it had been. When visitors came, he showed them how a family lived in a place like that. What you cook on, where the animals stand, how you sleep with the wind going. Everyone understood it was a demonstration, including him. At first, then the visitors went home. He stayed. They thought he was showing them the past. He was finding out whether he had left home too early. Some evenings there are people sitting outside that cave. Some evenings there is nobody at all. He sleeps up there anyway. From the edge, the dragon blood forest looks healthy. Then you notice there are no children in it. Every tree around you is grown. Same thick trunk, same wide crown, same height. Underneath them, there is almost nothing. No young ones coming up. No knee-high trees waiting their turn. The reason is something you have already seen. Seedlings do not survive out in the open here. The only new trees coming up anywhere on this island are on ledges and cliff faces on ground a goat cannot reach. Meanwhile, the old ones are running out of time by themselves. The droughts have been getting longer, and a weak tree does not recover the way it used to. Then, in 2015, 2 cyclones crossed this island inside of a week and put full-grown trees flat on the ground. Trees that had been standing since before anyone's great-grandfather was born. One storm can take out 3 centuries. So the forest you are standing in is not a forest. It is 1 generation. And for a long time, nobody planted the next one. That has started to change. Up on the plateau, there are low stone walls now, head high, dry, stacked out of whatever rock was lying there, thrown around small patches of ground. Inside those walls, young dragonblood trees are growing. Outside the walls, a few feet away in the same soil, there are none. One herder on Dixam decided to try something nobody around him had managed. Working with the island's environment authority, he started raising dragon blood trees from seed behind a wall the goats cannot get through. He will never see one of them reach the shape people photograph. Nobody alive will. Now go up onto the ridges above the sea after dark, where the cloud comes in off the water. People are up there stringing nets between 2 poles. Not for fish, not for birds, for water. The mesh sits in the fog. The fog leaves water on it. The water runs down the mesh and gets collected at the bottom, which is exactly what the tree above them does with its crown, and has been doing since long before anybody arrived here to watch. The island worked out how to drink the air millions of years ago. The people have only just learned it. Everybody found Socotra. Almost nobody changed it. Greeks, Romans, Indians, Arabs, a Portuguese garrison that gave up after 4 years. They took what they came for, wrote their names on a wall, and went back to their ships. Nobody stayed long enough to rewrite it. That is why any of this still exists. Not conservation, not planning. Distance 4 months of wind every year, and an island that was never worth more to anyone than what could be carried off it in a season. But the same thing that kept Socotra intact is what makes it fragile now. Almost nothing here is written down. Not the language, not the words for the clouds and the plants, not the rule that says you take from a tree once every 5 years, not the one that says you feed a stranger before you ask his name. None of it is on paper. All of it is in people and in a forest that has not made a new generation in a very long time. So when you hear that Socotra is the last place on Earth like this, that is not really the point. The point is not that it survived. The point is that it is still surviving, and that it is being kept alive by people doing work they will never see the end of. A man opens a tree he will not be around to see recover. A herder builds a wall around seedlings that will not look like trees until long after he is gone. Somebody climbs a ridge in the dark to hang a net because the water has to come from somewhere tomorrow. None of them will be here for the results. All of them go anyway. That is not a tradition on this island. That is the job. And Socotra is only one part of this story. 240 miles north of here, the rest of Yemen is waiting. Almost nothing about it looks like what you are expecting either.